Welcome to Push the Lane. I am Nick Allen, and I'm joined by a man who doesn't believe in socks, James Reilman.
I think you can see my socks right now. You're obviously not very observant. It's actually a religious thing. It's been passed down through generation. Last week we talked about our group stage picks. We talked about who we want. I actually wish that I could take back that Dignitas pick, throw in Najin Sword. I was homering a little bit for the NA scene. I don't care. Moving on. Who are the last two teams we're going to see in the finals? We're going to go over it. I think it's going to be M5 and CLG.evo. We've seen how strong they are in the past. Tournaments, live events, even if we're going to see a lot of interesting strategies, they tend to play to the late game. They play, to those last team fights, 50-minute games. It's going to be very long. And M5 and CLG.evo, they have some of the best team fighting, late game potential out of any team. M5 in particular, with their kiting back and forth with their heavy bruiser comps. So I think they're really going to succeed.
Yeah, I don't think Moscow 5 is actually going to be able to handle the early aggressiveness of the Asian teams. I don't think that they'll be ready for it, and they'll be aiming to get to the late game, and they just won't make it. So because of that, Moscow 5 not going to win the whole thing. But that comes to my picks. I think first place is going to be IG. They've been performing extremely well. They've played in some North American tournaments, like I mentioned last week, destroyed some teams like CLG NA on high ping. So imagine what they're capable of at a live event. And so I think IG is going to get first. Second, Moscow 5, they are really strong. I think they're going to be able to make it to the late game against all the other teams. They're going to get to play the game they want, but they're not going to be able to handle what IG has to bring.
IG's interesting because we completely disagree on IG, and they have some interesting lane matchups. They do unusual lane matchups, but they still play standard play later in the game. They're very aggressive early, and I think teams will be able to account for that. We've seen level 2 bot with Ezreal. They just dive in for a kill, but I think that teams will be adjusting for that, and I don't think they're going to be able to push aggressively enough to end the game when they need to, so it'll drag on. I really don't see them getting out of group stage. But that being said, it's going to be exciting. My third team, if the bracket doesn't match up, is probably Najin Sword, but we'll see if IG can make it.
Yeah, Najin Sword, you take back that Dignitas.
I do take that back.
Okay, so also we want to talk about what champions and interesting strategies we're going to see at this event. So for me, it's a lot about the flexibility in champions. Jace specifically can be played in almost any position. We've seen him played as support by IG, and I think even Ferris has played it once or twice. So we're seeing Jace all over the place, and Nunu is another flexible champion, can play in the jungle and in support, and extremely strong in both roles. So it's really about those two champions, so expect to see them banned or played in almost every game.
Yeah, it's definitely about those flexible champions, but even more so kiting champions. People are going to be going for aggressive pushing strategies. They want to de-emphasize team fights for the most part. They don't want it to all come down to the one crashing fight. So we're going to see lots of kiting champions like Orianna and Zyra, like we've already seen, but we'll also see some unusual picks that we haven't seen in quite some time. Champions like Katarina. Zillion has been played some by a couple of teams like M5, potentially Teemo and whatnot. So it's going to be exciting to see. I'm really excited to see what CLG brings out, though, because they are some of the most unusual picking teams.
Yeah, I've been impressed with CLG's kiting team using Trundle with those pillars, so it's pretty strong. So we'll have to see how the other teams handle it.
All right, so next up, congratulations to Salsay, picked up by Team Curse. Season 3 subs are coming around, and it's going to create an interesting situation because all the top players that aren't on teams, they're going to be subbing in. And that might actually take away from a lot of those lower tier teams that are trying to raise themselves up. It would be nice if they could play on both the sub team and on a new team that they're trying to create themselves, but it's kind of a difficult situation for Riot to handle.
Yeah, it is going to be rough for those less established teams, but it's actually going to make for a lot better games overall, and that's because it's going to be more competitive to keep your spot on your team. Now you have to worry about some sub stepping up, taking over your position, so it's incentive to continue to practice, continue to play well, and not get lazy. We've actually seen that from a lot of teams who like win a championship or win some big LAN or lose horribly and they just kind of go MIA. And so, this is going to make sure that they continue to play well.
That's actually a great point. And then you consider back like season 1 when CLG was competing. At that point in time, there weren't standard lanes, but CLG in particular, they all swapped roles. Big Fat would play AD some, he would play top, he would play mid. Chowster would jump into the jungle some on Lee Sin. And so the potential for that 6th pick to actually jump into the game, that could be interesting. That could bring a new element in itself. So that should be fun to see.
Yeah, and we saw how fast Salsy took over top lane and got good. So I think for pros, it's pretty easy to pick up positions. So for our last subject, we went to Twitter. We asked you guys what you want us to talk about, and blind pick for the ace match was the big topic for this week, and
Love it.
We love it.
Gotta have it.
You know, so a lot of people don't really like the blind pick and the ace match, but we really like it, and that's, for me personally, it's because of these complete comps that teams are allowed to pick. They can pick all 5 champions to have specific synergy in team fights, and you know, right now it's kind of an era of 2 or 3 champions having special synergy on the team, but now imagine all 5 champions, the plays that we would see. It just makes for really entertaining League of Legends.
Yeah, the only concern is if it doesn't feel like a real game, if it's anticlimactic and that, you know, the final match of a set doesn't feel like a real League of Legends game, but I think it will. And I just looking back, if we could have, for the past 2 years when Hotshot was playing top lane, seen Nidalee in the 3rd and 5th game since it was banned all the time, that would have been awesome. I would have loved to see that. That's what I want to see. I want to see people's best champions, unique strategies. We don't have to worry about the OP champions quite so much because everyone can pick them if they want to, but it opens up a wide diversity of unusual strategies that'll really help the game.
Yeah, and we're considering using it for IPL 5, so we'll see. We're not completely set on that yet. So, but that's it for this week, guys. This weekend is the World Championship playoffs, so make sure you watch that. And the next week we'll have another episode. Let us know what you want us to talk about, you know, regarding the World Championship. And I'm at Nick Allen IGN on Twitter.
At Baroncast. Definitely message us. Enjoy your weekend and have a nice week.